here. I'm hoping that this microphone works.
I've never liked the ones over my head. It always feels so weird. I can't tell you how weird it feels to have this like thing sitting over my head. So anyway, you know, I know you're going through a lot of changes here, and you know, one of the truly, I'm going to even say horrifying aspects of life is that everything changes. No, I mean, as, I don't even know what to, I mean, you don't need me to tell you that. But nothing, we can't build anything that's stable. And that isn't even the worst part. The worst part is we honestly have no idea whether for us personally the changes will be beneficial or harmful. We have no idea. And what I see in myself is, and I see it in other people, is one, we don't like to acknowledge the risks that we're taking by connecting to things. So you all took a risk by connecting to this church. Inside of that connection is the certainty that things will change at this church, along with the certainty that you will change. But none of us like to acknowledge that risk, that the risk is inherent in every single thing we do with any kind of connection or attachment or cathexis or affection. We, without acknowledging it, we undertake a risk that it will change and end, and we don't know whether that change and end will feel beneficial or detrimental to us. And almost all of us avoid thinking about that, about everything. Like, you know, we try to go through our lives in as much denial as we can get away with. No, we do. I mean, that's our operating system, is let's live in as much fantasy as we can possibly do as we go through our day. So let's like daydream that things are stable. Let's daydream that I'm massively important. Let's daydream that I'm better than others. Let's daydream that the crap that happens everywhere won't happen to me. Let's have some fantasies about how, you know, everything's just going to get better. It doesn't always do so. And let's then also have, I'm going to say, fantasies, daydreams, that I'm not responsible for the life that I've created. So we live in almost like a total state of delusion, mostly self-created, starting with this unbelievable importance we put on ourselves. We wake up in the morning thinking of ourselves, we go through the day thinking of ourselves, we end the night thinking of ourselves. All day long we're trying to maximize the experience of ourselves. All day long. And we try to position everything so this self stays at the center of whatever this life experience is. And then something relatively benign, like your church is, you know, in an uncertain place. Because, you know, the people who helped create the experience, their lives change. So they have to move on. And the truth is, you have no idea whether your church will prosper or not without them. You have no idea. And you can't have an idea. I mean, we don't know, because everything changes. I mean, I've taught at Stanford for 25 years. I was a graduate student there. I don't know, about 2 years ago, I ended up on a part of campus that I almost never am on. It's where I used to be a student, the School of Education. And I was coming out of a alleyway, and to the right would be the School of Education. And when I was a student there, and I don't know how long, 20 years of my time there, there was two buildings right in front of where I came out, and they're no longer there. And there's a new building. And it's nighttime, and I'm coming out, and the first thing I thought is, like, I've had a stroke. I have no idea where I am. That's what I thought. Like, what is this? Where the hell am I? I thought I knew where I was, but this is brand new 21st century building where there used to be this almost 20th century building. And it shook me. I mean, I really felt like befuddled until I remembered, oh yeah, that's right, they replaced this building and they got all this money and they built this brand new thing, but I got annoyed. Where's my building? No, like, they didn't ask me, nobody consulted me about this brand new building, and it's been there for 2 years, I found out, so it was just me. But I didn't want a new building, because I liked my old building. And, you know, that's really that's really almost at the heart of what makes this so hard. You know, what makes this whole journey so hard. And, you know, there's a poem, a little piece of a poem that I was going to read. Mary Oliver just died. Was just a phenomenal poet. I mean, but this is a piece of a poem called The Uses of Sorrow. And the two things are, someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift. And that's what's so challenging about all this. Like, loss and change and disruption and end are built into every inch of this life. And our resistance to that makes it much harder for us to get through this life. But it also keeps us from, I mean, I can feel it in myself, it keeps me clearly from being happier. Because I haven't fully figured out how to deal with such an unpredictable thing as this life, that part of my answer to that is to try not to. You know, is just to criticize and condemn and argue with things that have changed, which is easier, at least for a stupid mind like mine, than dealing with it. And, you know, it's a challenge of getting older, you know, because so many older people, you know, it's not as good as it was, or it was better then, or things are different, and blah, 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 blah. And there's a truth to that. And what that misses, though, is the continual inevitability of that experience. Everything changes. And we don't we don't want this deeply enough. So one of the, well, two things. One is, one of the ways that we can like help ourselves is like little simple reminders, like with your church, that like before your church was here, some other entity used this space. So this isn't yours. You know what I mean? You're just temporarily using this. Well, that's unsettling for us. Who wants to acknowledge the truth? Like, who wants that? Wouldn't it be much nicer to walk in and go, my church, and my people, and my this, and my that, and this is ours, and blah, 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 when that's true only for a period of time, and really only if you're lucky. But we don't embrace the truth enough of, yeah, this a lovely little spot, but wasn't our spot a certain number of years ago, and it won't be our spot in the future. And the people sitting here, they won't be the same people 5 years from now. So we're manufacturing the stability because it makes it easier for us to go through our day and make decisions and, you know, do what we do. All that's great, but we forget it's only it's only something we manufacture. It's not actually true. So I know you're going through a transition. I mean, I felt it the last time I was here because I was thinking, I was reflecting on that. I said, you know, I don't know how many years I've come here to talk, maybe 3, 4, something like that. And I remember when I was asked, and I think it came on an email, but I don't know, would you come talk to our church? Because, I don't know, I think, you know, we're now getting more guest speakers or something. I don't remember. I said, sure. And then I came here and people were friendly. And, you know, I came back because people were friendly. I mean, you know, it's friendly. So it's certainly more likely that people like me will return when people are friendly. I have to be here. So when people are friendly, I can tell you one story, and just not, how do I put this? Not to take for granted like the general goodwill that I feel here. I had a period of time in my life a number of years ago where somebody in my family was quite sick. And I was giving a talk like this to a church. And I don't know, it was an early evening service. So let's say it was 5 o'clock. They probably had a morning service, I don't know, but I was speaking at 5 o'clock. And I remember standing up at whatever this is, like the lectern, and saying, when I started my talk, you know, I just have to let you know that I have a personal issue, and the second my talk is done, I'm leaving. Like I have no more time for this. I gave you my commitment that I would be here. I will do my best to give you a talk, but I have to go right after. So, okay, and the minister's standing right there and says, yeah, of course, go. Okay, so I finished my talk. I'm walking down the center aisle of the talk, after the talk, and like this guy gets up off his chair and says, Fred, I don't agree with some of what you said. This is me leaving. And then I looked at him and said, so? Tell me why I should care, you know what I mean? And then he says, well, don't you want to know what my point of view is? And I said, no. So he slunk away. 10 feet further along, a woman jumps up, and says, oh, you're going into your car? I'll walk you out. Because I want to talk to you. That's unfriendly. You know, it's, I do sense, what I sense here, which gets me back, is a little more generosity of spirit than just what you can take. What I mean to say by that is, like, if there is something here that needs to be preserved separate from some of the people who have helped you create this, it's going to be that generosity of spirit. Because people pass. You know, they all pass. We all pass. And we don't get to keep them forever. But I've had so many experiences in churches that don't have generosity of spirit. And I mean so like I had a conversation with Shani, who also comes here and talks every now and then. I said, when I came last time, I don't remember, and I found out that, you know, that so many people were changing. And I called Shani and said, did you know that blah, 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 blah? And I said, yeah, I did know. And I said, well, it's very imminent. And Shani and I was saying about how, yeah, you know, there's something about this little congregation that we're willing to drive an hour to talk to. But it's that not, it has to be that not just focus on the self. Like that is that image of me walking down that aisle to go home to help somebody who was quite ill, and these people trying to stop me to grab more for themselves. That's what you want to avoid. I think it's easier to avoid that when you recognize that you're impermanent and that you're not the center of the universe. I think it's our delusion of permanence and that the things we want will stay that has us like support our self-absorption. If you really know that, I don't know, what do they figure, that life has been around in this universe for quite a while? You're just a little speck of it, and your speck is time limited, then that kind of humility probably has an effect on what you feel you can just take. Because if it's for all of us, if we can recognize that, you know, we're just given an opportunity to be here for a while, and that the people here come and go, and that the things come and go. And Stanford, against my better judgment, continues to make new buildings. I swear, I don't even know where they come from, except wealthy people pay a mammoth amount to have their name on these new buildings. So, like the guy who co-founded Microsoft, he has a building or two. They're like $140 million for a building. And Stanford has lots of them. But they have changed my university. No, but you know, because that's all we have is this point of view of us at the center. And so Stanford has changed my university. And I don't always take that well. My university now has no parking. But it's supposed to because it's my university. So we're all dealing with this all the time. The decisions that we have to make are we strong enough to see it at least a little bit clearly? You know, that in this life, things just come and go, including us.
Mm-hmm.
Things just come and go, and we never owned any of it. Never. Are we willing to create that degree of a foundation of truth around this? And secondly, much harder and impossible generally for the human race is can we be generous around that? You know, that it's very hard to be generous from a self-centered point of view if you recognize that you don't own anything. And so these are tremendous challenges. I mean, these are human challenges that have been with human beings forever and will never stop, ever. And your church has just bitten off a tiny little piece of that with your change. And, you know, I'm just, you know, when I come talk to places like this, I just try to think, like, at least either what I hear in the service or, you know, just reflect on the vibe. What can I bring from my experience that resonates with their experience? And change and the temporal nature of all this. You know, a no easy thing. The last thing I'll say is not all change is good. I have sat with too many people as a forgiveness teacher who have had dramatic, horrible change for me to have that blathering nonsense that all change is good and everything's wonderful, and I don't buy any of that. However, change can show you the truth, which is almost always good. So even with people who have suffered horror, they can be touching the truth of, well, these people didn't belong to me, that I got a chance to love them. Life is unpredictable and difficult. Now, can I choose to be good and kind? That stream of thought change can engender in a positive way. But the effects on the individual of change are often not good. They're often very difficult and painful. And you can't I don't know, pray them away or something, or say to yourself, well, it's all good. Because it may be all good, and I would guess it is, but you have to do work to go from the surface level to the deeper level where you can touch that it's good. And that's also really hard. It's really, 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 really hard. The last thing that I'm going to say, well, two last things. One is, it's funny because I didn't plan on saying about that guy walking up and down the aisle, but I have to leave after I finish. I hadn't even thought of that. I'm wearing my little, I do meditation training for the women's basketball team at Stanford, and their game starts at noon. So I have to leave right after I'm done to get through as much of the game as I can. So if anybody stops me, know in advance what a jerk you are. Just letting you know. I hadn't even thought about that, but I do have to go. But the last piece, just to hold on to, is one of the other really hard parts about this life is that you have to do a lot of grieving. And it's just part of the package. And the more we allow that, I mean, I think it gets a little easier, you know, but you gotta do, grieving being is like the brain's desire to reorganize as change and loss happen. Anyway, thank you very much. I do always like